Welcome to the virtual pool, and before we delve into today's topic, a quick word about the virtual pool for anyone new to the group. So my name is Lorna Crust and I teach at Marjorie McClure Special School, which is one of the Youth Sport Trust lead inclusion schools across the country. Our role is to provide training and support for schools, as well as supporting young people in competitions and leadership opportunities. The virtual pool evolved during COVID with the aim to connect teachers, so that's what we're doing now. Hello everybody. Support each other and share ideas to deliver high quality school swimming programmes. And we've joined forces with ASWM UK to provide a variety of training opportunities. And we tend to meet once every half term. Obviously this term we've got 2 meetings that we'll talk about at the end of this session. In case you were wondering about the logo on the banner of the virtual pool, this is the flame icon and is representing Marjorie McClure logo and the whole school ethos, which reflects the Olympic and Paralympic values. So emblazoned on our hoodies and everything. So it's really embedded into our school curriculum. And the stars around the outside reflect the key stages within the school. Right, I'm going to hand over to Alison now, but welcome to the virtual pool.
Okay, so welcome. My name's Alison Bell, for anyone who's not met me before, and this workshop is exploring mini polo. So welcome to today's session. We're very excited about this workshop and hope you go away with some inspiration to deliver mini polo to some of your groups. So let's have a look at what we're going to cover. So we're going to design, so by the end of it, we're going to see if we can design an inclusive mini polo game. We're going to explore resources that we can use to deliver that programme. So let's start with a thought for the session. So why teach mini polo? So think about that as we're going through the session. What groups could you teach this to? And what would it look like? So as we go through, we're going to give you lots of different adaptations and different ways to play. So bear in mind how that might look for you and your groups. And we'll look at that again at the end of the session. So let's have a look at the resources that we have. So the swim pics that you have here that show mini polo are in the school swim pics pack and also in the red Break It Down book, which is linked to the Swim England School Swimming and Water Safety Charter. Now, in the red book here, for all the outcomes on the programme, there are progressive teaching practices and teaching points for all the mini polo skills we're going to look at today. And there's also information on how to play the game. So in the school charter, there's an award called the Aquatic Skills. One of the outcomes is to play a game of mini polo. So this is really useful for those deep end groups where those swimmers may be attending competitive clubs. So this allows them to learn a new skill. There is added value because mini polo can be played at all ability levels and will hit the targets of PE through games. It's also the development of the fundamental movement skills and literacy, physical literacy, which is also an important way. Well, the good news is it's an all-inclusive game. And the amazing thing is for us as teachers, it's all about the adaptation we apply using S.T.E.P, which Lorna's going to explain and revise shortly. So this is perfect for non-swimmers and improvers in shallow water or on noodles, advanced swimmers in the deep end in enhancing their treading water skills. It's brilliant for special educational needs and or disabilities, teaching so many different skills, especially hand and eye coordination. So I'm going to hand over to Lorna and we're going to look at what type of equipment and what adaptations we can make to play water polo.
Thank you, Alison. So the equipment, we've got a whole host on this slide, but it's all about what you've got in your swimming pool area. So you can adapt the equipment. You don't need a lot of specialist equipment to play mini polo. So I just want to put that out there. So first of all, if you're going to play team games or you're going to have two teams, using different colour hats are useful. Some children find the hats quite restrictive on their heads in terms of that sensory feel. So you might even want to, if you've got access to water polo hats, which are more cotton fabric and they're not quite so tight on the head, they're quite useful. Or you might want to completely avoid using a hat completely and perhaps use coloured wristbands. You know, those plastic wristbands that are quite popular at the moment. You can get them quite cheaply in different colours, or even any PE band or something to identify the teams. Water polo balls, you can see here I've got 3 on my pool side. The yellow one at the top is a size 5, a proper water polo ball, quite hard, quite unforgiving for those people who are learning the basic skills. Then we've got the mini water polo ball, which is the green ball in the middle, which is smaller and more easier to handle because of the smallness, but it's still quite hard in texture. And then we've got these what I call squishy balls. We've got a whole host of selection of squishy balls. And as you can see in the picture on the right where I'm squeezing it, you can see how easy that is for a child to actually manipulate that ball compared to a hard sort of a not squidgy ball, if you like. The goals, again, you don't have to purchase expensive goals. These ones that Alison's highlighting, the rigid frame, are quite expensive, but they do sort of fit neatly onto that pool side at the pool that I use. Quite difficult storage wise, that's a downside. They're expensive and storing's difficult compared to the inflatable ones, which are very quick to inflate, do the job, nice and colourful, and relatively cheap as well compared to the rigid frame. Or you forget those goals completely and use floats, perhaps propped up side by side, PE cones. I don't know if you've heard of speed stacks, but at my school we've got giant speed stacks, and I use those today as goals in my lesson. So you can use lots and lots of variety of different objects to indicate the goals for the swimmers. And finally, you've got the whistle, so you can use this for leadership activities. We often have lots of swimmers not lots of swimmers, but swimmers who perhaps can't play, but they can be included in the game by making sure they know the rules, being on the side, using a whistle. I'm just looking for my whistle, which I've misplaced, or a squistle. If you don't know what a squistle is, it's one that you squeeze hard, so you've got your squistle to indicate the rules. Another point as well for somebody on the side is to perhaps hold up visual cues like numbers, or hold up their hands so that the swimmers can see, we'll talk about the passes in a moment, how many passes they've made in order for them to move on to score, and that develops peripheral vision for the swimmers as well. So again, that's not the complete end of equipment. I'm sure you might think of other things, but this is just a general guideline for you, and you can adapt and use anything you've got in your pool too. Thank you, Alison.
Okay, so the next step we're going to go through is how do we actually play mini polo? And there's lots of different ways of doing so, as you'll see by the end of the session. But we're going to start with this Swim Picks card just to explain how it works. So the first thing, you would need to pick your team of players. Ideally 6 players are filled. However, this can be adapted. As you can see on the card, we've got 4 players in each team. So you establish perhaps wearing different colour hats, or as Lorna has just explained, wearing wristbands or something of that nature. And then you need to set out goals somewhere. And again, we've got more ideas for you later on today. But here it's indicated by just having some cones up at the end of the pool. And the last thing we would really need to make sure that we do set some basic rules to make sure that it's inclusive. So the game starts with both teams on opposite sides of the pool. The whistle is blown and then the ball is put into the water. Now, again, there's lots of adaptations here. It can just be thrown in and then the teams swim towards the ball to gain possession. Or in water polo, the ball is often dropped here at the side. So you have your fastest swimmers here, which means these guys will fight to get the ball, if you like, and the others will get in positions to play the game. So there's lots of ways to play, but we thought we'd start with that. The other tool we're going to go through now is S.T.E.P. So I'm going to hand over to Lorna.
Yeah, just a quick recap on the S.T.E.P principle. So the S.T.E.P principle is a useful formula to make lessons and activities more inclusive. We will be sending out a link to the Youth Sport Trust Top Sports Ability resource that has really useful videos and PDFs to download, including ones that explain the S.T.E.P principle really simply and visually. If we haven't got your email, then I will be posting it onto the Facebook page, The Virtual Pool. So thinking about space, first of all. So if you think about the space being used, so for example, using the shallow end versus the deep end will make it more inclusive and make it meet all the needs of your swimmers. Considering perhaps using zones, which we're going to talk about later in an adapted game. So you've got specific areas for specific swimmers. So utilising space is a really good way of thinking about a game or providing an activity that meets everybody's needs. Adapting the task, so thinking about the task and maybe adapting it so it meets everyone's needs again. The type of equipment you use, we've already talked about the balls that we've used in water polo, so perhaps using a deflated ball versus a hard ball will make it more accessible and also motivate swimmers to want to play the game. They're not going to want to play if they're going to get hit in the face with a hard ball. Using swim picks cards to make it very visual, a really useful piece of equipment. And it may be that some swimmers use a noodle or armbands throughout the game to give them that additional support. In terms of people, it might be that in the lead up to the full game, you develop the progressions that utilise different numbers of people. So for example, in my lesson today, I just had them working on their own with the ball. Then I introduced a partner. Then I introduced threes and we had Piggy in the middle before we introduced sort of a game of 4 versus 4. It might be that the swimmer needs an adult in the water to be with them or a buddy system just to support that swimmer within their lesson. So the S.T.E.P principle, really useful formula to perhaps to reflect on whenever you're thinking about developing your swimming activities to become inclusive. Okay, thank you, Alison.
Okay, so let's look at, we're going to actually look at 8 different mini polo skills that we could use and teach, perhaps over a period of weeks and then play a game, or, you could sort of use them as warm-ups, contrasting activities. So the first one is crawl with the ball. So as you can see from the swim picks card here, they're swimming front crawl, the head is high, the arms are wide, so they're swimming front crawl with the arms wide, and the ball is in the middle. So we could adapt that for them walking, actually using the arms in whichever way they can, and keeping hold of that ball in between. So that's using our S.T.E.P principle, like changing the space and possibly even the equipment, so that you've got a smaller ball, for example. So this pick up the ball and rotate the shoulders. You can see the arrows here, and this is relevant to the shoulder movement here. And this position here is called the tripod. So I'm going to show you that with the ball I've got here. So when you're teaching water polo and holding the ball, try and teach them to pick the ball up from underneath. This is quite a squishy ball, similar to what Lorna was saying, so I can kind of grip it with my fingers. And then if you watch my shoulders, I'm going to turn my shoulders so I end up in that tripod position. So again, I can do this skill, treading water, possibly using egg beater leg kick or any type of leg kick. I could be on a noodle, or I could be standing in the shallow end. So it's a great way to pick up that ball. Whilst we're on this sort of section, what children tend to do in water polo when you give them a ball is they kind of bounce on top of it and it goes under the water. So when we spoke a little bit about the rules, one of them could be if the ball goes under, then it's a foul and it goes to the other team. So we want to encourage them to pick the ball up underwater and then move their arm back into that tripod position. Once they've got those 2 skills, they can then put them together. So they can crawl with the ball, maybe stand up, hold the ball, into the tripod. And once we've learned some throwing skills, they could throw the ball and then repeat the skills again. So lots of sort of ways of linking those together. The next one I want to go through is throwing with one hand and catching with two. And then we'll talk about the adaptations and how we can use S.T.E.P to sort of build this in. So when you're throwing the ball, hopefully you can kind of see me there. The ball comes from behind and it uses the arm, and the fingertips are the piece of your body, if you like, that you use to throw the ball. So if I take the ball away, the ball should go in the direction of where my fingers have gone. So that's how you teach throwing. So they're kind of throwing at the target, shoot the fingers sort of where you want the ball to go. You want them to catch with two hands. If you have children that are more at the advanced level and you want to challenge them, what would happen is that if they catch the ball in one hand, you want the arm to go back so that the ball continues into the hand. If your hand stops suddenly, the ball would quite often just bounce off the hand. So if you're teaching catching with one hand, it grips and the arm moves back with the movement of the ball. So our adaptations here could be that they throw with two and catch with two. If you've got children that are unable to throw, they could push the ball or they could strike it. Whatever works for those children, then you can adapt that with them. So using S.T.E.P, we could bring in more people and we could do passing in a circle, throw with one hand, catch with two, or whatever your adaptation might be. You can then develop to putting an attacker or a defender in the middle, for Piggy in the middle. If you have your green hat people quite far apart, that's actually quite easy to get the ball past the person in the middle. If you bring them closer together, it becomes more of a challenge. So adaptations there could be, you could put a time limit on how long they stay in that section. If you've got somebody that you're kind of in a situation, we've got children that are unable to have this person in the middle, you could put a rope across, so they're trying to get the ball to and fro the rope. So again, lots of adaptations, can all be done in the deep end, can all be done in the shallow end, can all be done with noodles. So you've got lots of adaptations there you can make. So this is my favourite, and this is shooting the target. So what I've done many times is I've filled up just water bottles, maybe old lemonade bottles, leave the lids off at the top, fill them up with water, and then they shoot, and then they try and knock the bottles over and see if they can empty the bottle. So that works really well. You can progress that to having a goalie in place. And again, you can adapt this to having perhaps 5 litre bottles, so the target's bigger, maybe have the rafts up on the side, so they've got to hit that, maybe floats, so they've got to try and hit floats. So there's lots and lots of ways that they can have shooting practice. Now, the defending and attacking is probably more of an advanced skill. So you can see from the pictures here, you've got this person here defending and trying to give this person a clear pass to somewhere. And here you've got the purple hat attacking, trying to get hold of that ball to stop them being able to pass that ball over. So these are more advanced techniques. In the red Break It Down book, there is a full list of progressive practices and teaching points for both defending and attacking, and they're on page 35 and 36. So you can obviously use those as well if you want to develop the sport further. So I'm going to hand over to Lorna, and she's going to talk about how we can adapt the games.
So based on those skills, if you develop those skills, it's really nice to put the swimmers into a competitive sort of situation. So one of the games I just think is really useful and works really well is called, I call it the caterpillar race or caterpillar game. And it's normally played in PE. You have your team one behind the other. You're all sort of nodding your head thinking, oh, I remember that. You've got the ball at the front of the line and the ball's passed down to the back person travels to the front, replaces, and so it goes on until you get back to the beginning. But if you think of the skills that Alison's outlined, you can get that passing the ball from with one hand, passing it to the other people along the line. When it gets to the back, you've got that front crawl action, adapting it so if they can't do the front crawl, they can walk with the ball, trapping it in their body, so they're doing that alternate arm action. You can even do things like where you have the ball at the front and they throw it to the back person, so they're getting a bigger throw going on. So it's a really good activity that works, that can develop lots and lots of skills. You can then have it where they compete against themselves. They could time them, so you could time just the team, time them again, see if they can get better after some feedback, and then you could do a head-to-head type of competition, so they've got a little bit of a competition against another team. Another game we want to look at is zone play. So this is where you divide your teams up into the pool into zones, with maybe your less able swimmers in the zones on the far side, in the dark blue zones. So they've got a specific area which they can see or they feel safer in. Yeah, so that what you could do then is they stay in their zones. You could introduce rules so that you have to pass 5 times before you shoot at goal, but maybe that must include 2 passes out to the wings. Or you could alternate the passes, so you go from the middle to a wing, back to the middle to the wing, so that you're including everybody. I think it's really important in the games that you're going to play, the adapted games, to make it inclusive, to make sure that it's maximum participation and that everybody is involved. In terms of scoring, you could have the people in your zones on your left, on the sides of the pool, bearing in mind if they're at the side, they can hold on to the side if they get tired as well, but they've got the cones at the ends of the pool that they can score into. You could increase the number of cones to make it more accessible and more achievable for them to score, and then you could just target the ones in the middle. They can only score using the goals in that end of the pool. So lots of variety there with that game of zone play. And again, zone play is often linked with basketball, and again it's on that Youth Sport Trust Top Sports Ability resource, so you might want to look at that and think, oh yeah, I can adapt that for the pool. Okay, the next adapted game is something I made up, touchdown we call it. And you can see we've got 2 teams with their green and their purple hats on, and around the outside of the pool they've got the floats lying flat on the pool side. So they're obviously going to score by touching down on one of those floats. The rules obviously to try and make sure they perhaps pass 5 times before they're allowed to touch down, making sure that it's not always the same 2 people just passing backwards and forwards 5 times. Remembering back in the right at the start when I talked about the referee could be on the side holding up how many fingers in terms of how many passes have been made, so that they develop that peripheral vision of being able to look around them as well. You can make it harder by taking away those floats, so you haven't got as many floats up, to make that more challenging as they get used to that game. So that's just 2 ideas. There's no right or wrong. It's all about being creative. You're trying to develop those skills through a competitive format, which will then lead into the mini water polo game that you're trying to get them to achieve. So we hope we've given you some ideas about developing skills needed for the game, and also adapting games and activities to promote inclusion. So we're going to hand it back over to you now, and we're going to just put you into just some breakout rooms. And what we'd like you to do is to think about how you're going to differentiate the teams. How are you going to score? So are you going to have lots of cones? Are you going to give, so for example, another example was today, I had a big raft up and 2 smaller cones either side of the raft for my teams, and they scored 1 point if they hit the raft, 2 points if they hit the smaller cones. So that's another example for you. And 3 rules to include inclusivity, to create inclusivity. So what rules? It might be your zones. And then what we'd like you to do is just to type into chat, so you've got some more ideas, and you can save your chat with the 3 dots at the side of the chat. Just reverting back to that slide we showed you at the beginning, why teach mini polo? So I'm going to just throw things out at you of why teach mini polo, which I hope will resonate with you now that you've been on this workshop. So I think fundamentally it develops a whole host of core aquatic skills, such as treading water, coordination, rotation, Loads and loads of core aquatic skills, as long as the stroke work as well. You've also got those fundamental skills: agility, balance, coordination, the passing and the catching and the throwing skills. Alongside, if you came to the extracurricular workshop we did last month, we talked about the social skills and the cognitive skills. So there's also things like leadership, and teamwork, really fundamental to the children's education in the water through Mini Polo. So I'm hoping that was helpful, and you can see the benefits of including this into your swimming program. And I've been doing it all day today, because I thought, you know what, we're delivering this workshop, so let's just teach it all day. And I had a whole host, obviously I'm in a special needs school, whole host of ages from primary through to secondary, and they just love a ball. They just loved it. So and I adapted and did exactly what we've just told you all on here, and it all works. That's the beauty of it all these activities work. Okay, thank you, Karen. Oh, different from stroke work. Some of my schools. Okay. Yeah. Making it inclusive by ensuring children get to touch the ball. Absolutely, Rebecca. Some nice ideas coming through. Okay, so we'll open up to questions in a moment, but just to finish now, just to lead you on to where next. Obviously, our next workshop, well, one of our next workshops is on Thursday, the 21st of April, and it's a workshop exploring ADHD with strategies and solutions. So it's an hour-long workshop, and you can book onto it through going to the aswim.uk website. And although it's swimming focused, it does resonate with classroom teachers as well. So that's our hour-long workshop on ADHD. And then the virtual pool, we've got various meetings going on. We will post this onto the virtual pool, but you might want to take a picture, because it's got our email addresses on that, as well as the Facebook page and the ASWIM website. But on 24th of March, we've got a speaker coming in to talk about the Halliwick concept. If you haven't heard about the Halliwick concept, it was devised back in the 70s for special educational needs and disability. But if I say I trained in it decades ago, actually, and I utilised some of their techniques within my mainstream lessons as well as my special school. So that'll be really interesting. It's just after school, 5 to 5:30. In April, we've got a workshop on how to use new, old and inclusive swimming equipment. So being creative with the equipment that we use. May the 23rd, so just before half term, and as we ramp up to our drowning prevention week, the RLSS drowning prevention week in the middle of June, we're going to do a water safety workshop, but we did one before half term on the Youth Sport Trust Inclusion Week, and that is still available to watch, because we looked at dry side as well as pool activities, but we thought we'd do something completely different and do some ideas on delivering water safety assemblies, including some signing. So water safety assembly, I've done quite a few in the past, and it just targets a bigger audience, particularly if you haven't got swimming going on at that time in your school. So a water safety assembly, you might think I'm not in a school, but if you're in a leisure centre, you might find that your swimming coordinator goes into school, so they might be interested to find out what the content of that assembly could be. And then finally, in July, we're going to have our final virtual pool meeting looking at inspiration for teaching swimming throughout the year, which will be looking at ideas for your next academic year, and perhaps sharing ideas too. So that's what's happening. We hope you found the mini water polo workshop helpful and inspired you to go away and have a go at delivering in your lessons. And if we stop sharing the screen, we can just ask if you've got any questions.